We're live. Hey everyone, Marco and Ken here. Welcome to the Fios Project Hangout, where we talk a little bit about 5 steps to learn to code and launch your own startup. So welcome. I hope you guys are all there. We're gonna wait like a couple more minutes to let everyone trickle in, and then we're gonna keep going.
Yeah.
Introducing ourselves and then talking. We have a lot of material to cover, but yeah, we're super excited here.
Yeah, we're really excited for this talk, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So.
Yeah, it's cool, and you guys can see us jumping up and down here, and we're gonna probably use the whiteboard a little bit, but mostly us talking probably. We don't like PowerPoint slides. We're both developers, right? So PowerPoint slides, yeah, we don't do that so often. We're showing live examples or tell you how to do it.
Absolutely. So what about Twitter, Marco?
Twitter? Are we doing anything on Twitter? Do you want questions on Twitter?
Yeah, if you guys have questions or if you just have comments, just tweet them out at us. Use the hashtag the Firehost Project.
Yeah, if you want to do that. Are you checking Twitter?
I'll check Twitter. I'll be the Twitter guy.
All right, the Firehost Project. There we go. Okay, let's get started. I think everyone is there. We can quickly check. We should have a lot of people already in there. Do you want to check that?
Cool, yeah.
Awesome, cool. All right, cool. Should get started. You have followed Twitter. We do Q&A later down the line, but let's get started. First of all, like, what are we going to do, right? We're going to talk about a lot. We answer questions. We can, and at the end, via Twitter. So use the Fios Project hashtag. We monitor that one. And first of all, who are we? You know. My name is Marco. This is Ken over here. And rather than introducing myself, I'm going to introduce that guy. And then he can introduce me. So this is Ken, a senior web developer. He worked for several startups, Where.com, which was acquired by how many million? I think 160,000 or something by eBay. 130 million. 130 million. Here we go. 130
allegedly.
million.
Allegedly. We don't know for sure.
But a whole bunch
if you
of
look
money.
on like TechCrunch, that's what it says.
That's what it says. Okay, we can believe TechCrunch. So 130 million by eBay, and then and PayPal, and I worked for PayPal for a while. And then started doing a lot of teaching and coding and helping people, and we got together and started teaching people. And so he's a really good web developer, really technical, can build pretty much anything in a couple days that I throw at him, or that we build together. But before you think too highly of him, I always like to tell people one thing that Ken kind of sucks at, and that is pretty much if you ever at the ocean, at the beach, and you're going to go paddleboarding or something, don't go with this guy because he always gets you in trouble.
Okay. So I think I've heard enough of this. So this is Marco, my good friend. Not only is he a kick-ass web developer, he's done awesome stuff like product management. He's led UX teams. He's worked for a number of really successful startups, companies like Jana, Peer Transfer. Peer Transfer is a tuition payment platform that I think billions of dollars have gone through it at this point.
Maybe just 1 billion or close to 1 billion.
But huge, absolutely huge. So Marco is killing it. He's an awesome teacher. He's an awesome web developer. But before you think too highly of this guy, there's one thing that you really need to know about him, and it's that he kind of sucks. And what he sucks at is he sucks at teaching me how to sail, because every time we go out sailing, I just flip the boat. So and I blame him because I've never sailed before I met this guy.
That teaches you the first lesson of today. Do not go in the water with either of us because you're going to be in trouble. Okay, what are we going to do? You know, first of all, like a bit about background, that's us, but how did we get into teaching? How did we get into teaching people how to code? So I think, you know, we heard from a lot of people over and over in our network here. We are based in Boston and Cambridge. Like, hey, can you build an application for me? Can you build this app for me? I have this awesome idea. What should I do next? And we couldn't help everyone because there was too much demand. And at the same time, a lot of our friends were always asking, like, hey, you guys want to build something for a friend of mine here and here over there? And we said, like, why don't we teach people? So we started going around and you know, teaching hundreds of students by now, I think, or close to thousands actually, how to code and how to build web applications. And so we went to places where we have been, like, I know we went to New York, Harvard, Who else?
Yeah, so New York, Boston, Pittsburgh, we've been to Hawaii, sort of going all over the place, and then we started going through to universities. So that's places like Harvard Business School, Rhode Island School of Design, Babson, Brown University, and we even went to a couple of high schools too. So we taught some students at Punahou and Iolani, a couple of high schools. Punahou is where Obama went. So
that's what he always used to say. Punahou is where Obama went.
I love that.
My wife went there too. But anyway, that's a different story. So yeah, we've been all around the country teaching, and lately we started teaching people like virtually, or not lately, for like over a year, like building web applications from having no knowledge and actually building their own custom web applications. So that's something we really enjoy, and we're co-mentoring a lot of students there, and that's something that's really going off and people really appreciating. But we should jump in and keep going. So that's our story. But here's like we said, like in the description, we're going to answer a few questions. And one of the first ones is like, why should I actually learn how to code? We get that question a lot, and that's like people asking, you know, can't I hire someone to code for me? Do I need to learn it myself? And there's a few good reasons why we believe you should learn how to code yourself. And the biggest one to me, I always like to say that it's like, if you're really an entrepreneur and you want to build your own company, don't have someone else build it for you. Don't hire someone to build your tech product.
It's not going to work if you just sort of hired somebody to build your dream for you. Just things will fall apart. And we've seen it happen time and time again. Like, do you want to talk about maybe the stories that we've seen?
I'm usually going like, you know, it's like in the beginning you launch a startup. There's so many unknown variables, and you need to control as many as you possibly can, but you cannot control everything. But the one thing you can control is code, writing code and building a web application. That's something that will not get out of control if you know how to use like an editor, if you know how to write code. So that's why we're saying, like, you know, don't let someone else build your company, build it for you. And so if you're looking at stories, right, we had one student who came to us, and I think he spent like, what is that, $30,000 of, he raised like money from family and friends, $30,000 on his fitness app, and he was hiring people, and you know, he just spent that, and he didn't have a lot to show for it at the end. It was really like,
yeah. So what ended up happening is that the companies that built this stuff out, they built out sort of pretty close to what the vision of this guy had. He sort of said, this is what I want to build. The company went through and they built something. It wasn't quite there, but it was close enough. And then he started getting user feedback. And it turns out that these users actually wanted something a little bit different. So all of a sudden, he actually had to make a pivot. So he had to change like the core feature set. And all of a sudden, his money was gone. But he also learned so much from the process of talking to these customers and finding out what they really needed. So he ended up coming to us, and we taught him how to code. And now he's...
Yeah, he sent us an email a while ago. It's like, thanks for all the inspiration. He's building out his own product. And he's a lot happier because he's... a lot faster now. And there's another guy, like, we have a student, Phil, right? He built...
Phil, yeah.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. He built, actually, we taught him how to code, and he kept going, and now he has, like, his own little business running that makes a few $1,000s per month, I think, connecting students with businesses and exchanging work there. And, yeah, other students have gone on raising angel rounds and stuff. So
yeah, and that's like the entrepreneur side, right? So, but there's like multiple reasons why you would want to learn to code. Like one might be you want to start your own business, and like I think learning how to code and be able to be the person who builds this stuff is super important if that's your goal. But a lot of people don't have that goal. But learning to code is also pretty valuable. So, say you work at a company and you want to be like the go-to innovator at that company. So doing something like that, as well as maybe you just want to land a job as like a web developer. So there's tons of reasons that people want to learn to code.
Yeah, I mean that's really like, you know, reading that in the press, like over 1 million new computer science jobs in the next couple of years are available. So there's demand, and I mean we get that every day on LinkedIn, right? That recruiter email us like, hey, are you available? Can you come work for this startup? Can you work there? And we're like, no, we're running our own show. But that's really what we're hearing from a lot of people. Like there's huge demand, and if you look at like people actually having jobs within companies, not necessarily want to leave. Like there's one story that always sticks out to me. That's from a good friend of ours, Aaron, and he actually learned how to code, and he was working for a big market research company in Seattle. And what happened to him was he realized that the way they did business was they always would outsource the analysis of all their data that they had, I believe, to India, and what they received back was a lot of Excel sheets with tables in them. But the consultants always did PowerPoint presentations. So they went through 4 or 5 hours, took them to sift through all the Excel data through tables and copy and paste things over into PowerPoint and make really cool presentations. So he wrote a program over like, I think 2 or 3 weeks that automated that down to 5 minutes. And so all of a sudden he was the fastest consultant in his company because he could do everything. Everyone was spending like weeks and he was doing it in a few hours. And yeah, I think now he's a corner office and he's the go-to innovator at his company. So that's also like you can be inside of companies and you can use code and write programs and use it, and that's really powerful. And one other thing I really want to hammer home is like when people ask me, why should I learn to code when I start a startup or have my own idea, is really it's getting the feedback from the users. If you put yourself in the shoes, if you're starting out and you build your own first application, what's usually going to happen is you want to get user feedback. You want people telling you, oh, I like this, I don't like this, I don't know how to use this, can you make this better? And that's really valuable because the best startups out there, and we know this because we worked at startups for many years, is really they take that user feedback and they change that into new features, improved features. And their cycle time of getting feedback and releasing new features is really tight because they can build really fast. Now, if you can code, you can change user feedback into a new feature within, like, I don't know, an hour or two, maybe a day.
And even think about like really small stuff, like say you want to change a headline on a page. That's something that isn't really that hard, but if you have to talk to a consulting company and like go through that process,
right?
A freelancer, stuff like that, it's going to take you just so much time. And changing a headline, that's like, there's literally one place that you have to like write one line of code, and it's a very simple line of code, but you just don't have access because you don't have access. So learning how to code is really valuable.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's move on. So next thing we said we're going to talk is like, what's the best way of learning how to code? That's what people ask us a lot too, right? And we usually tell people, pick a real-world project that you want to build and build it. It's pretty simple like that. And why are we saying this? Because a lot of coding classes go teach you one language really deep, or you go through, or you do stuff in browser, like Code Academy, right? You type and HTML, and students usually come to us and they're like, well, I gone through Treehouse, I gone through Code Academy, but I don't know how to use the real tools, and I don't like how to get something live out there. Like, what's the next step? How can I actually launch a website? How can I actually launch a web application? And so we usually say, like, pick a real-world project, use the same tools as the pros out there, and then build it and launch it and get all the skills that you need. So one of the things our students built, like in the first, like, I think, like 4 days, they built like their first web application that they launched live on the internet. And so they already have that feeling of like, oh, this is how it feels going live and being a developer and being in a driving seat and pushing something live.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast people can build stuff and also how empowering it is. Once you push your first web application live on the internet, you just all of a sudden feel like, yes, I can do this. I can take over the world.
And that's what we're hearing, right? That's what we're hearing all the time. So another thing you need to think about is like, so features and everything. So students with us, like one app that they build is like a Yelp clone, right? So we're taking Yelp. I think all you guys are familiar with Yelp. And that's what they built in the first like 4 weeks or something. They code for like 10 hours, 15 hours a week maybe. And they built a Yelp clone. And one of our students, Pete, wrote us a few weeks ago, and that was something that just makes us feel good if we hear back from our students. And one thing he said is like, you know, I was at a party and I pulled out my phone and I texted the link to my app that I just finished, that I completely launched. And I texted it to one of his friends who's a professional programmer and works, I don't know where he works, for a big company like Microsoft or something like that, right? And the guy pulls out his phone, clicks on the link, and his browser opens and he goes, wow, how did you do that? You know, and that made him so proud. I made us proud when he told us, but it also made him proud because he was like, oh my God. I was like, I always thought this is like this super coder, which his friend probably is, but his friend probably didn't know how to do web apps, didn't know how to build something that would look good on a phone. And that's like really all we want to do is like have that empowering feeling of building something, pushing it live.
Yeah, build something cool. That's really what we sort of stress, and make it something that isn't like just running stuff in a command line or just like really fuzzy theoretical stuff. Build something that you can get user interaction, user feedback. That's what we're really passionate about.
Yeah, I remember when I started years back, I spent 3 weeks, I think, building a little what was that? Like a bit of sorting, a bit of you could add some surf spots in the terminal. I'm a surfer, so I surf all the time, so you could add surf spots. Don't shake your head. It's cool. You could add surf spots and find surf spots and sort them by ranking, all in my terminal. And it took me 3 weeks. Pretty complicated code. But I showed my wife, and I was so proud. And she was just like, I don't know how to use this. It's just crazy, like these green numbers fizzing around your screen. And I was like, okay, that was really frustrating for me because I thought it was the best thing ever.
And you spent so much time doing it,
so
too.
much time, right? And if I would have built the same thing, like a nice visual interface, and showed her on my phone, she probably would be like, oh, wow, this is really cool. And so that's what we're pushing for. You know, as always build something real, I think. That's the best way of learning how to
And
code.
something that you're kind of excited about, too. The more excited you can get about these projects, the better, like the more motivation, and it'll just really push you to sort of actually build this really awesome stuff.
Exactly. Why don't you get some? Maybe we get some questions already while I move on. Okay, so other thing we want to talk about while Ken is checking here and quickly checking for the hashtag. If you guys had any questions so far, is where should I start and which programming language should I learn first? I mean, that's what we hear a lot from a lot of students, and we usually say, don't focus on a single language. Focus on bringing everything together. You know, if you go and say, like, I'm going to learn JavaScript inside out, that might take you a year or two. Probably that's never going to end. You always learn something else. But it's going to be hard for you to launch something like a real product and be proud of it and show it and share it with friends and maybe get that first user feedback. So what we usually say is, like, you know, use all the tools together to build something. So what are we teaching when we teach people?
Well, we teach people database stuff. So Postgres SQL, it's just a database. So we'll teach people about that, and we'll also teach them about like Ruby, it's a programming language, Rails, which makes it really easy to build really awesome web applications.
Yeah, maybe we talk about that a little more. So that's cool. We do Ruby on Rails, right? And a lot of people ask us, like, oh, what's a Ruby on Rails? I also know like Python and Django and all that stuff. And I always like to clarify that for people to understand. Maybe some who are just new to it, right, or haven't heard of it. So Ruby is a language that lets you like interact with like a database. It's a programming language, same as Python, same as like Objective-C, all those languages. Now, what Rails does, it's a framework. And a framework is usually, in the short answer, is it just makes things faster and easier for us to develop web applications. So if we're thinking back before we had frameworks, and we had a form on a website where somebody enters their email, like an opt-in form, right, for a landing page. So what we needed to do as developers is we need to write about 20 lines of code to grab that email out of the form and store it in the database, right? So now if you add first name, last name, maybe an address or something more complicated for a whole user account, you had to all of a sudden write like 50, 60 lines of code to grab all that information and store it in a database. Now, that got complicated really fast. So, and it also took a while. I had to write this from scratch every single time. Now you enter Ruby on Rails, the Rails framework. And with that, we can write the same functionality, something that we always need to do. Grab something from a form, store it in a database, and maybe retrieve it later from the database. We could do the same with like, what, 2-3 lines of code?
Yeah, so Ruby on Rails really just makes it really, really easy to build like really awesome stuff without having to do as much work as you have to do other places, because it's just the framework itself is taking care of it. It's doing all the complicated stuff for us. So
how this works really is like we write one command and hit enter, and it builds a bunch of custom files for us, and we can just go in and update them. But if you ever do any Ruby on Rails, you realize that immediately. It's like, oh, okay, it's like builds code, generates code for you that you can just use and update and change, which makes web development so much faster, which is why we can launch new products in hours rather than like weeks. Another thing is like what we're teaching is like, so there's Ruby and Rails, then we also do like, you need to make it look good, right? So we do HTML and CSS, right? HTML is what the browser reads. CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets, makes everything look good. That's how we apply styles. So if you're looking at this page right now, Google Plus, right? There's shadows, you see boxes. That's all CSS. That's all the styling that we need. So our students learn that too. We'll also throw in a little bit of jQuery and JavaScript.
Yeah, but before we jump onto the JavaScript stuff, the other thing that we're using, and I think it's really powerful, and like if you build web applications, you should look into using it too. It's this Twitter Bootstrap framework, which really just makes it just really, really good-looking websites, and it makes it like pretty easy to do that. So the technologies out there are just really making it easier than ever to start building really cool things.
Yeah. So if you have time, we can also share those links with you later after the talk. But Twitter Bootstrap. Free, getbootstrap.com, I think is the link. It's a really good place to look into. Makes everything mobile first out of the box, and has a lot of, like, if you want a button, green, red, blue, whatever, they all have it there, and you can use it. And then you can take that as the foundation, and then write your own your own CSS, your own styles on top of it, and make it your own and make it unique. So it's not like it looks like everyone else who used Twitter Bootstrap. And that's usually how we teach our students, right? Start with a solid foundation that looks good, and then improve one step at a time and get better and better and better.
That's really what coding's all about. It's all about getting the first thing out that kind of does what you want, and then slowly taking steps to make it better. So you think about, like, what's the smallest thing that could possibly work, and then what's one way that you could just get closer to your thing. And instead of like having this huge monumental task, I want to build the next Facebook or something, you can sort of say, like, well, I want to build a place where people can post stuff. So you just do that, and then you think about, like, what's the next feature that you could add. You break it down instead of sort of thinking about, like, build the entire thing all at once.
Yeah, and we can go into that a little more later when we talk about wireframing.
Oh, absolutely.
But another thing that is really important is called a tool called Git and Github. They go together. Some of you might have heard that already, but that's like, I said Ruby on Rails, a little bit of HTML, CSS for like making things look good, Twitter Bootstrap, and then we use something called GitHub. This is where we back up our code. That's where developers live, where open source code is available, where people also help you if you have questions, where you can collaborate with people, and that's what we do with our students. We work together with them on the same tools that any startup would use. Most startups are using.
Yeah, when I was working at PayPal, we used GitHub.
Yeah, when I was using at Pure Transfer, we used GitHub. I lived on GitHub all the time.
Yeah, it's a wonderful tool. It makes it super easy to collaborate, so working with other people. So it's really powerful, and it's amazing what you can do with it.
Cool, and then the other thing that I want to mention is, like, one thing that's really important, and that's one thing you can do right after this webinar is over, if you have an idea that you want to launch, is Wireframe. And I think we're going to go and do a little bit of wireframing exercise in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I'm actually excited for that.
But that's basically take a pencil, take a pen, take a paper or a whiteboard, and draw out every single screen of your application that you want, and then draw what happens, or write on it, what happens when this button is clicked. What happens when you click here?
Yeah.
How's the user going through, right?
Yeah, let's go into that in a lot more detail in a little bit.
Next one I think is, like, we get a lot of people asking me, it's like, I think coding is so difficult. I tried a little bit, I did this one class, and it's hard. And I think it is not actually that difficult if you align a few things, right? So it's like, if you have a path of first I learn this, next I learn this, then I learn this, and you combine them together, it's not that hard to understand. And then always, like, that path guides you to getting something out there, getting something in the browser, launching something consistently, like a real startup. Like, launch something every hour, every 2 hours that you code, you have something new that you can show for. And that is like the path, and then maybe sometimes you get stuck. And then everybody gets stuck sometimes, and like everybody can use some help. So like when I was working at startups, like I was coding, right, and I would run into problems. Like, it happens to everybody. So immediately what you do is, like, you first try to solve the problem, and then after a while you go and you ask the guy sitting next to you, hey, can you help me solve this problem? And just pull them in. And it's amazing what you can learn when you start working with other people. Yeah, more often than not, they come by and they're like, comma missing here on line 5, and you're like, oh, go away, go away. And it's just embarrassing. But now you have the problem solved, and you can keep going.
The other thing that's really funny is there's this thing called rubber ducking.
Oh, this is a good one. You should pay attention to that one.
So what rubber ducking is it's when you sort of you have a programming problem, you're stuck, you're having some problems, and instead of actually just like just hammering through and trying to fix it, you just describe the problem to an imaginary rubber duck that you have. So imagine you have like a toy or something, and you just describe what the problem is. And the fact of you explaining what the problem is, 9 times out of 10 will actually just cause you to solve the problem, because it'll be like clearly obvious why your problem is happening. So one of the most powerful tools is just explaining what the problem you're having is, and then you end up finding the solution just like that. And that's how it helps to work with other people too.
Yeah, cool. I was just checking on Twitter feed if you get some questions. So if you have any questions, let us know there. A story that I want to tell on that front is like one of our students, Alex. She actually, I think she goes to Harvard here, and she's an architecture student. And she was talking to me, and she's like, I don't know if I can learn how to code. It's pretty difficult, and always talk to people who know how to do that, do the design, do the coding, do the back end, and she didn't have the confidence. But she went through, and after like 4 weeks now, while she was working right now full time as an architect, she actually launched her first web application. And now when she emails me, when she reaches back out to me, asks a question also with you, right? You do the one-on-one mentorship with her. She just talks like a web developer. It's amazing. It's like she talks about migrations, databases, back and forth, and it's just
crazy.
It's just always mind-blowing to us when we talk to students at the beginning and where they are at, and they feel, sometimes it's hard. Like you're overwhelmed, you feel it's like a real difficult task, and you might not have the confidence, but then you build on that.
Yeah, it's all about like the confidence and having like a path to go through. I think it's like a lot of people get stuck sometimes, just sort of like it's overwhelming how much stuff that you have to learn.
Exactly.
And if you just try to do everything all at the same time, you'll just be confused. So it's really just all about like having the right path and going through it.
Yeah, and I think that leads into one of our last questions. While we hit the half-hour mark, and then we have time for a little bit of wireframing as well. Show how to do that is, I think, what do I need to learn to what do I need to have to make my own idea a reality, right? That's like what a lot of people ask us. And I think you need 3 things. First, you need the motivation. That's really it. You're learning something new, and it's going to be difficult. It's kind of like, you needed to be motivated when you wanted to learn how to ride a bicycle when you were little, because you sometimes fall down, right? And you need to get up, and you keep going. So that's one of the reasons why every single student that comes to our program, we're going to ask, or everyone will ask us, what do I need to do? We always ask, do you have an idea? Something that you want to build that actually is really valuable. Like one of our students, he's really into, and both of us had no idea about what this is, like horse racing and horse race tracks, I can barely say it, in the US.
Yeah, because you can bet on the horses, right, and bet on the jockeys, stuff like that.
I knew, but I had no idea how many horse race tracks there are in the US, and now he's building an application that shows you all of that.
The cool thing about it, it's like so data-driven too, so there's like all these weird stats about, like, he was showing me, like, we were going through these files, and we were like parsing it out on our like one-on-one mentor session, and he was like showing me all the data that they have, and you'd be blown away about it's not just who won.
This is science.
It's just like it's more complicated than baseball. It's cool.
It's stock trading on horses. Anyway, so that was something that I learned a lot because I didn't know anything about horse racing. But that's just something like what I mean. It's like he had that motivation, and he knew, like, he got stuck sometimes, and it was hard for him. But at the end, he was like, this is where I want to go, and that's my passion, is horse racing and betting on horse races. So that was clear to us that he will go through and like complete everything. And you could throw any obstacle in his way, and he would get through.
Yeah, but the flip side is if you're like, why do you want to learn to code? And you're like, I don't know, I think it's cool. Like, you're probably not going to have the motivation. So it's really all about coming up with an idea that really gets you fired up.
Something that you're passionate about, right? So, example, I'm a surfer. I'll probably build something like, I probably know it exists already, but maybe make something better. Like, okay, here is the surf forecast for my favorite spots in New England, right? And I get that on my phone or something. And maybe there's a notification every time it's good, right? Wow, that'd be awesome if I could build this, right? Now, this is something that I could get behind, like spending hours on figuring out how to do.
And if you look at like big companies, like people who are like web developers or iPhone programmers or any of that stuff, what you're going to find is what they do is they work like their days and they code all that stuff, and then the weekends they have these like fun side projects. So they end up building all sorts of stuff, and it's really just for the joy of building something that they really are passionate about. Like one thing might pay the bills, but like, hey, you know what? It's really fun to build this surf forecasting app.
Exactly, we should build that. Okay, and another thing, so we have motivation, right? Makes sense, right? The other thing is like having a path, having like a clear, like we call it a coding path. So you can learn the right skills or the best skills at the right time, right? So you maybe not need to know JavaScript at the very beginning, right? But you probably should know some HTML and CSS and make it look good, right? But when do you need to learn how to deal with databases? And that's really important, like going through that path.
What a lot of like the traditional ways of learning this stuff go, it's sort of like learn everything about this one thing in depth and then move on to the next thing. The thing is if you do that, there's like so many different topics that you need to learn about that you'll end up just like spending so much more time learning about these arbitrary advanced features, but you don't know how to apply them. So learning all the things, all the separate skills that you need in parallel and sort of building on it is just a really fast and powerful way to learn.
Exactly, which is what we're doing. It's like we're looking for motivated people and we're giving them a clear path. And then we're also giving them mentorship sessions. Like one of the things that you will be having trouble with is sometimes you get stuck. And getting stuck is no fun, right? So you're coding on Thursday night and you're in like 2 hours and it's going really well, and all of a sudden you get an error message and you try for an hour to solve it too and you can't figure it out, right? And you're like frustrated. So what we try to do, or what we have, is like we have forum support where we always have a web developer on staff helping students that get stuck and help them get unstuck as fast as possible. We usually do like, what, 2 hours we help people, 1 hour? So it's basically like you have an error message, put it in our forum, and then drink a coffee and come back. And you see like, hey, you miss a comma here, hey, you misspelled something there, hey, you missed that one step beforehand, look in another file. And it's usually just small things. It's exactly what Ken said earlier. When you're at work, you go to your coworker, you say, can you quickly look at this? And that's what we're giving like you virtually, so you have that time. And also like having a mentor, right? So maybe you can talk about that, like being a mentor and like helping people and like splitting a complicated task into individual.
Yeah, so the cool thing about the mentor sessions that we do is like all the different types of mentoring like that people need. So some people are looking to learn more about I want to build this specific feature. So they're looking to build something out. They want to learn like actually like physical things. Help me build X. So we can sort of spend the time to sort of, well, you got this error message, let's fix that. So that's like one of the types of mentorship we do. The other thing that we think about is like, what are your goals? And is like building stuff out, like going really advanced in the feature set important, or are you looking to like move a career? And in that point, it makes more sense to talk about like, what are you going to be expected to do as a web developer? Like, what's the day-to-day stuff? How does the interview process work? How do you find your first job? Like, what are you going to be expected of? All these things. But somebody who just wants to launch their startup doesn't really care about that stuff, right? They're just like, hey, I don't care how people get jobs as web developers. I want to build my thing out.
Exactly.
So,
and that's how you can make it individual, right? Because you have the mentor, and so
yeah,
it's flexible and fits to you.
And that's how, like, if you look at the big companies and stuff, like, that's how they'll pair you up if you're a junior developer with a coding buddy or just like a partner that sort of, when you get stuck, you go to that person. So like I've mentored tons of people at PayPal just because that's sort of how we work.
That's how it works, right? You're an apprentice. Somebody teaches you how to do it. So we got one good question here. First of all, Mary said that she bought all her students rubber ducks, so that's really cool. Thumbs up for that. I really like that. And then also Russ asked, are the tools we mentioned better fit for web or for mobile development? We can talk about that a little bit later, but it's also like, sounded like Ruby and Bootstrap are both frameworks. Do I need to pick one or the other? Really good question. You pick both. Ruby on Rails. Rails is the framework used for everything, what we call on the back end. That's the database stuff, what makes the web application dynamic, right? Things get stored in the database, get pulled out. And then to the Bootstrap is a front-end framework that makes everything look good for the user, what you see in your browser. So two different sides, back-end framework, database stuff, that's the Rails framework. Front-end That's a Twitter Bootstrap. So use both together, and it will come really nicely together.
Yeah, so this is for building web applications, and web applications are different than web pages. So, like, what are some examples of some web applications that people commonly use? Like,
so I think that are built in Ruby on Rails. So Airbnb, if you ever rented one, Twitter, right? We're using Twitter now. That uses a lot of Ruby on Rails. What else do we have? Groupon, right? The deal site.
Basecamp is like my favorite, right?
Basecamp,
I'm a huge fan of
management.
37 Signals. I think they're just like an awesome company, and like it's just a wonderful product. So really cool. Like these aren't just like static websites, right? Static websites are things that just don't really change. It just always gives you the same
like
thing.
Your portfolio page.
Yeah, my portfolio. Hey, wait a second.
Never changes.
Burn. But yeah, so basically web applications are more complex. They have things like user login, they have like databases, they have all these things, whereas a static page just doesn't actually change. But mobile development, that was a really good question. It uses a different set of tools. So if you're going to be building mobile apps, you're not going to be using things like Ruby on Rails or Twitter Bootstrap. There's different tools out there, but at the end of the day, if you just pick something to learn and then learn it, and all those skills apply to something else as well.
Exactly.
So like coding is something that sort of, as you build up the skill, you get better and better at it.
Exactly. We usually tell people, go with a web application first that you make look good on all devices, and then you have the whole database infrastructure ready, and then put a mobile app on top that grabs data from that database. Mobile
apps are sort of difficult because there's I guess there's three main contenders out there for the different like carriers. There's the iPhones, the Androids, and the Windows phones, right? So if you're going to build a mobile phone, you're going to have to build like 3 applications. It's not one. But if you build a web app, you can just ship that out. People can access it on any phone.
Okay, cool, awesome. Russ happy. Okay, so one other thing I wanna cover is you know, what we do, our program, our virtual web development apprenticeship.
Yeah, so like, after that we can do the wireframing.
Oh yeah, exactly. We can do a little bit. So guys, get you started with your own idea, and you know, so you can do something tonight already. Because we're not coding. We usually code with students all the time. So this is one of the few times where we just talk and we're not allowed to reach for the keyboard.
It's hard,
which is hard for us. But the one thing that we do, 12 weeks, right? We go through, we're using the same tools as we use that work in at startups, some of the best startups in the country using. And that's what we teach our students. So we always do like real world web applications, like what we said in the beginning. Pick a real project and build that. And we're building things like, like the first 4 days, students launch their first web application, right? It's just like a simple advice generating app that looks good on mobile, that looks good on tablet, right? And then yeah, I get the feeling already, wow, I can launch something, right? And then the next one is we build a Yelp clone. That is like really cool because it has features like user authentication, log in, log out. You can do things like Google Map API, right? It's really powerful if you can actually type in an address and it saves it to the database and gives you the pin on the map. And then the other thing is like you have user comments and also automated notifications. Somebody gives you a rating, you get an email. Hey, Ken just said 5 stars for my pizza place. Awesome. Those are things you want to do besides dashboard. And that's what people build in like the first like 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and then we go up and kick it up a step. Call this our accelerate part where people build actually like something like Netflix or something like Udemy, right? A video online streaming platform. And that gets really deep into like database relationships. You get things like we can do credit card processing. You can accept payments. You can actually use that platform that you built to make money off if you want, and host like video series on there or video online learning codes. So that's I think the most important feature that people build from the other one, from the video online platform. Then it's like it all leads to building your own idea out in the last 4 weeks.
And that's the most important part, is
exactly.
Having your mind set on building something really cool from the beginning, because that's the why you're doing this.
That's when I would build my surf forecasting application together with a mentor, and that mentor helps you all through the first 2 months, and then in the last month it helps you, treats you basically like a junior web developer at a startup, and we communicate via GitHub, and we're always living in code, and that's really, really powerful. So it's some students out there Steven from Batson, right? So he builds an on-demand delivery platform for medicine right now, and he's pretty much getting done, right? I mean, he's going to launch that in Sacramento, I think, first, and go. I don't know.
It's pretty cool. There's like live streaming of stuff. There's like really cool advanced features in that.
The way it works is like you have an app and you're going to go on there and you say like, I need my painkillers right now, and you see the car of the delivery actually moving over it, coming to your doorstep, and then you can go down, grab it, and it's already paid. So that's something really cool. That's one of his really ambitious capstone project the last 4 weeks. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much about our apprenticeship, 12 weeks. We say students need to spend about, what do we say, 10 to 15 hours per week with us. Yeah, I think now we can look at the few, and we give you the link. We can give you the link to all of that information so you can look it up. We can email that out so you can have a look. I think we're going to go through.
We got a couple more questions.
We got a couple more questions.
So learning Swift. I want to take this one. Can I take this one, Mark?
Sure.
Cool. So learning Swift is actually really interesting. So the reason you would want to learn Swift is...
That was from Claire, right? Thanks, Claire. Good question.
The reason you would want to learn Swift is because you want to build these iPhone apps. Because that's the main reason that people use it.
Swift just came out. Apple released that, right? A new programming language to build iOS apps for iPhone.
So maybe backing up a little bit, sort of before they announced that, maybe like a month ago or something, the only way to build native apps or like actual iPhone apps without using some like kind of crappy software and making it look really like phony was using Objective-C, which was this programming language that was actually just really hard to sort of get your head around. It was really like not a lot of people liked it, and it made it really intimidating to get started. So Swift came out. It's a new language, and what it does is it allows you to sort of build these iPhone apps without having to do the Objective-C. Now, the thing that I would sort of warn people, especially like the people just starting out with coding, about learning how to build mobile apps in Swift, is that it is very, very new. It is so cutting edge, and because of that, there's a lot of questions that people haven't asked that a more mature framework would sort of already have solved. Yeah. So basically, in Ruby on Rails, you take that framework. It's been around for so long. If you come across almost any problem in that, you do a Google search, you're going to get like an answer, and it's like, there's a mistake here, do this. And you're just like, you read that, you're like, okay, and you immediately do it. So the thing is when you're using something really cutting edge, it's easy to cut yourself, right? So exactly. Basically, I would suggest, if you haven't done any coding before, I would probably stay away from Swift. I think Objective-C might actually be easier because there's just this whole infrastructure of people who have learned it before, where Swift is just so new.
In other words, if you have an error message and you don't know what to do, you're probably going to find the solution for your error message explained in Objective-C, but not in Swift yet. And if you're just starting out, as Ken said, you don't want to put yourself in that position. Anna just asked, like, if you want to get started with the web development apprenticeship, what are the next steps? That's pretty easy. You can go to the Firehose project, because we like to drink from the fire hose and throw a lot at our students, .com, and just sign up there, and you can schedule a call with me, and then you can jump on a call, and then we can talk about one-on-one, what are your coding goals, what do you want to get out of it. So that's something I give you guys my phone number later too, so you can call me immediately, not during the webinar, or Ken's going to get mad that my phone's ringing. And also my email address, marco@thefirehoseproject.com. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If you want to get started, go to our website, and then we can take it from there.
So Christopher asks about certain languages and frameworks better for certain types of problems than others. For example, is Ruby on Rails good for certain types, where Laravel PHP is better for others? I think that's a really good question, and the answer is yeah. There's not like a one-size-fits-all solution where it's just like you always should learn this particular technology. So Ruby on Rails is a really wonderful thing to build really two types of web applications. Well, first of all, they're all web applications. Second of all, Ruby on Rails is really wonderful for building like web applications that people see and interact with. So that's like the big thing. So this is like visual stuff. There's buttons. You move stuff around. You have login. You have forms.
Yeah,
you
that's
have
why
stuff
a lot of
like
startups are using that. That's why Airbnb. Everyone uses Airbnb. That's why they're using Ruby on Rails.
Yeah, and I think Ruby on Rails is like probably, in my opinion, one of the best frameworks to learn for that. Other thing that it's really useful for is building like services out. So if you wanted to just build like APIs, so it's kind of like fuzzy stuff, but basically if you wanted to build something that a different developer could connect to, Ruby on Rails is really good for that. There's a couple other frameworks that are really interesting in very specific use cases. So if you're looking to do like these really algorithmic big data stuff, there's some things in like Scala and the Play framework that might be good for that. So if you have like millions of requests coming in all at the same time and you need to sort of like mix them, match them up, really complicated stuff, in that case Scala and like Play might be a better fit.
One thing I really want to add, like why we're doing Ruby on Rails, is because the community is really open, right?
Yeah.
If you compare that, as Christopher asked us, like with PHP and Laravel, right? PHP is not so many people share their code with other people, and Ruby developers are really, like, they really want to share. And so if you go on GitHub, you see so much code of people that they just give to you for free, and you can just grab and import into your own web application to use. For example, you need a user sign-in functionality on your application. You don't need to build this from scratch. That's something complicated to do, but people give you that code for free and you can use their code. And because thousands of people are using that code of that one development team that gives it away for free, you know this is good stuff, because if something would be broken, those other developers would complain really quickly. So that you don't see that much on the PHP Laravel side. So if you're a beginner and you want to launch stuff fast, if you go to the Ruby on Rails side, you have that additional advantage that there's a community behind you that gives you a lot of functionality with very little effort. That's another one. Then we have another one. Somebody asked, can the capstone project be my own idea for the we have that, we see that, we got that here in a message, for the web development apprenticeship? Yep, definitely. Like, that's something that all students do. We want them. We ask them. The very first question is, what's your idea? What do you want to do? And then students usually have an idea already, or they're passionate about something. They might not have it nailed down 100%, but they're pretty close. So yeah, we want you to build your own idea. That's how you graduate the 12-week program, by building your own idea. Then what else do we have? Does Swift translate to iPads and Macs as well? I think zooming out one, so Swift, the programming language, right? Does this work for iPads and Macs, so desktop and tablet and mobile, right? So Swift is for iPhone apps, right? So that is just the mobile app.
So it's for the mobile app, and it's using this language called Swift, right? So basically the iPhones will be running this code, but it's the programming language, and actually, interestingly enough, the programming language is interacting with a framework called Cocoa. That Cocoa framework, even though it's on the iPhone, it's actually shared across all three of them. So you have the iPhone, the iPad, the Mac desktop. They all use the Cocoa framework. So a Swift is compatible with the Cocoa framework that you build all these things. So yes, that's the answer. You could, if you want to build iPhone, iPad, and mobile apps, you can use the same language, but there's going to be like some subtle differences between it.
But again, you go into the cutting edge, and I just wrote a blog post about that. So many people ask me about that. It's like, if you go to the cutting edge and you run into error messages, you oftentimes don't know, is this your code or is this a problem with the framework that's still not fixed? And you might need to wait a week or two before somebody comes back with a solution. So that is something that you need to take into consideration when you learn Swift. But good question. Who asked that? Luis asked that. Thanks. That was a good question. Do you want to check the Twitter feed if we got anything there too? Then we have about 10 more minutes. I quickly want to show people how to wireframe. I think everyone uses either direct message or there you go. Okay, we can talk about that. I want to quickly go into wireframing, and we can run that through so people can see how to wireframe. So if you want to start tonight by actually putting your first thoughts into your idea, we can do that now, and then we can wrap it up, and we can do that. So basically, the basic idea of wireframing, and I'm gonna adjust our screens a little bit, is you want to figure out every single screen of your application before you start writing code. And the reason you do that is because once you're writing code, you don't want to think about what happens when I press this button and think it through from a user point of view. You want to have that solution somewhere on a piece of paper so you can focus on how do I implement that technically not logically from a user point of view, from the user experience. The other thing you want to usually have is all the copy. You don't want to think about, does this say subscribe me, sign up, log me in? That should be all clear. If you worry about copy and code at the same time, it's going to be really hard in your head to distinguish.
And this is something that's important whether you want to build your idea or if you want to sort of have a freelancer do it too. So
yeah,
basically,
you always want to know that.
If you wireframe it, draw out all the things, it makes it really easy both for you to understand, like think through the whole application, as well as communicate. This is exactly what it is. This is every screen, and this is what happens when every single button gets pressed. Because anybody probably has no idea about everything that's in your head, and if you just kind of talk about like feature sets like Salesforce integration and just really fuzzy stuff.
What does
that even mean, right?
Exactly.
So drawing it out is actually like a really powerful tool, and it's powerful for mobile as well as web applications.
So we don't have too much time, and I want to answer a few more questions and also wrap it up and give you a bit of an overview. But if we were to do something like somebody said, oh, we just need a landing page for that, and I'd be like, what does that mean, right? So if somebody says a landing page, I'm just going to go quickly draw this to show people how easy that would be. It's like, I'm like, okay, I have my canvas, switching colors. I have my canvas. Well, everyone can see that. I say, okay, it's got to have a top nav, right? I give it a name. And I say, okay, this is a landing page. This is a squeeze page. This just needs to collect an email. So I'm probably going to have like a background. I don't know, what do you like? I like high rises, right? So, and then you could just have a box over there and it says sign up or something. And my email field. And this says go, right? Now, at Gmail or something, look at this folder. This is already 100 times more effective to communicate than, let's just say I need a landing page, right? I know, okay, there's top navigation bar, there's a background image, there's this see-through box, it's a sign up. I know where it should be positioned in the middle. That makes it so much clearer if you communicate. And now we can focus on what should I do to say for sign up, right? This is Wireframe. You have 10 different, like, where, now we go. What happens if I press go? What's the next? What's the next screen, right? Would this be a thank you maybe, right? Or would this go to like, okay, you generated your user account, now gonna go back into your inbox and verify your email, something like that. That's all things you can think about tonight if you want to, and sketch out, wireframe out your entire application so you have it. And you can actually go, what we do a lot is go to some people and ask them, does this make sense to you? And run them through without writing any code.
Yeah, so, but like this particular thank you, we probably want to like build the page out that like sort of draw the page.
Yeah,
so
exactly. So we would just do that same page. Am I still on the screen?
Yeah, they're good.
Cool. Thank you for signing up.
So you can like see visually. You push your email, you push the button, you jump over to a page that looks kind of like that. And it, like, even though it seems like super trivial and just like, yeah, drawing boxes, like who really does this? Who really does this? Everybody does it. So if you go to like companies, startups, big companies, they all have like product managers who will draw similar types of wireframes using the whiteboard.
So right now you're thinking like, what are these two guys talking about, drawing the black and white things? This is what you need to spend time on and nail it down and then change code. Because what you don't want to do is like write this page up, build it, and then go, we don't need it anymore, and delete 200 lines of code. And you're like, I wrote all this from scratch. That's pretty cool. So I think quick wrap up, and then we can answer a few more questions if you have some, is, if you want to think like, we should have convinced you by now that learning how to code is really important, because if you want to have a cool job, there's tons of demand out there for people who know how to code. If you want to build your idea, if you have an idea, that's really powerful because you can take user feedback and make changes, and you can act so much faster if you can build.
And I think the most important message that I'd like to get across is just the fact that the biggest part of learning how to code is what Marco just did, right? It's sort of having the goal, having the motivation. So actually just sitting down at your desk and having a white piece of paper, or maybe like a graph paper, or just like any paper you want, sketching out what you want to build, that gives you the reason to actually make it happen. And you have this like tangible thing that you'll actually build. So this wireframing stuff, while it's just kind of like drawing boxes, is the best thing that you can do.
Yep, and you can do that tonight. And then also like think about, that's for your motivation, that's for your goal, and think about you need a clear coding path. You need to know what kind of stuff do I need to learn, and then find a mentor, find somebody. You can come to us. You can also look around if you find a mentor, somebody who knows how to code and can guide you a little bit and help you with error messages. That's really powerful because you don't want to get stuck and spend 4 weeks waiting for somebody on Stack Overflow or another forum get back to you and maybe give you the wrong answer. Want somebody to get back to you.
Yeah, and somebody who's been there and like been in the trenches, built the stuff. They've seen these problems so many times, and a lot of stuff that will take you like hours and hours and hours starting out is going to take somebody who's seen that problem hundreds of times because they've made it. It takes them no time because it's just like they were in your shoes and they sort of like have been there before.
Exactly. It's kind of like when you start how to write, right? And then your parents just come over and they spot you. They see your mistakes, your typos immediately. They just say, you spelled hello with 2 L's. Come on. And you're like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. This is the first time I wrote this word.
That happened yesterday for me, right?
But same goes with code, right? So yeah, again, get the motivation, do some wireframing, figure out the path of all the coding pieces you want. If you want to talk to us, right, go to our site, thefirehostproject.com, and schedule a call with me, and we can talk more about your coding goals. And yeah, we're gonna have more of these.
Virtual
sessions coming up. So you're gonna get us via our email list. We're gonna send out or on the meetup group wherever you are. And yeah, this was really fun. Do we have any outstanding questions?
So there's one from Lewis about VB.net. So I think maybe I'll send you an email, Lewis, about that one.
Yeah.
Because I think that one's kind of specific for you, but I'm happy to sort of answer that. So I'll shoot you an email with the
answer. One thing I wanted to do, if you have any questions tonight and you want to talk more, so you can email me, that is Marco with a C.
At the Firehost Project.
I'm running out of space at the Firehose Project.
Or you could just reply to the email that we sent out.
To the invitation email you can reply to. If you want to give me a call, I always give people a call. You got to move a little bit so I have enough space. So I kept my Hawaii number, 808-347-1135.
I think this might be backwards, like inverted.
No, I think that's only for us. 808-347-1135. And give me a call. And I'm happy to help you guys out, talk about your coding goals if you need any help. That's what we usually do. Give people my phone number. Cool, yeah, and it was fun. Thanks so much for being in there. And yeah, if you liked what you saw, if this was helpful, let us know in the comments.
And if you have any ideas that you think would make a really good next session, send us an email with that too, because that would be super valuable.
Email us and like, hey, you know what's really challenging for me is X, and we can do another session and answer questions from people. If you like doing. Okay, that's pretty much it. Wow, we're right on the dot, 6:59. Awesome, guys. Thanks so much. This was awesome.
Talk to you guys later.